Hi, welcome to Brownies by Yves Buissneus. This is a recipe for my middle school students. You'll need a large mixing bowl and a spatula. You'll notice I'm using a spatula that doesn't have any nooks and crannies, but you can use whichever one you have. I just don't like this to get stuff stuck in them. You'll also need an 8x8 baking dish. You can use metal or glass. And then in it, notice I've put a piece of parchment paper that's been folded up so that way it fits in there nice and neat to hold the batter. And if you want, you can double the recipe and use a 9x13-inch pan and then bake it for about 5 minutes longer than the recipe asks for. As far as the food goes, what you'll need is a half cup of butter. That's 1 stick of butter, which I've melted in the microwave for about 10 seconds at a time. As soon as I see it start to boil, I stop it, wait a few seconds, and then start it up again. I keep doing that until it's melted all the way. The next thing you'll need is 1 cup of white sugar and 2 eggs. I've cracked them ahead of time, so that way I make sure there are no shells in there. And then you're going to need a 1/4 teaspoon of baking powder. Make sure you're using baking powder, not baking soda, otherwise it won't rise. You'll need 1/4 teaspoon of salt as well, and then you'll also need 1 teaspoon of vanilla. You'll need half a cup of all-purpose flour and 1/3 cup of unsweetened cocoa powder. Make sure you're not using hot chocolate powder. It needs to be unsweetened cocoa powder. In the bowl, what you want to do is add your melted butter. You might use the spatula to scrape it out a little bit. And then add in your sugar. And you're going to keep mixing that in until it's all mixed in, looks kind of like wet sand. Go ahead and mix that all the way. Just use your spatula, stir it around till it's all mixed in and you don't see any of the white sugar anymore. It's just wet sand. Once that's nice and mixed, you will add your eggs to this mixture. Stir that in really good until it all looks homogeneous, which means it all looks about like it's one product instead of a bunch of different things together. So that's about what it should look like. And then go ahead and add your vanilla and add your salt and add your baking powder. Remember, we're using baking powder, not baking soda. Mix that in really good. You don't want any clumps of salt or any clumps of baking powder. Once that is mixed in really good, you're going to mix in your cocoa powder. Again, it's cocoa powder. It's not hot chocolate mix. It's cocoa powder. And it's going to be a little rough to mix in. And I want you to notice that I'm scraping the sides as I mix this in. I keep scraping it. I'm holding onto the bowl even though it's going off the screen. And I keep mixing this until it's all nice. And at this point, you should actually start smelling some of the chocolate smell, which is wonderful. And once this is all mixed in, then what you're going to do is add in the flour. Now, some people say they prefer to do all this by using an electric mixer. I think it's really much better to do it by hand because then you don't get it too tough. You don't get the gluten developing. And so we add in the flour and we mix that in really good. We want to keep mixing it so that way there's no white streaks left. We want that flour to be all the way incorporated in. And please notice the reason we're using a spatula is that way we can scrape the sides. And notice how I'm scraping this along. I scrape off the sides. I'm turning the bowl so I can get all different angles. And I scrape all the way to the bottom. I mix it in really good. A couple little lumps of flour, no big deal. I mix those in. And once it's all mixed in, then we're going to be able to pour it to our prepared pan. Now we're going to pour it into the prepared pan, and you want to aim for the very center of the pan. Now, if you don't have parchment paper, you can actually butter the pan and add just a tiny bit of flour and tap it around So that way that works, but it's usually a lot easier if you have parchment paper. And so I use the spatula to clean the bowl as best as I can, but I'm not going to worry too much about getting everything off. And you'll notice that when I put it in the pan, I'm keep adding it right to the middle, and I'm not worried about spreading it out. One trick is to scrape the spatula like that on the side of the pot or mixing bowl, and then that just goes into the oven. Make sure you've preheated the oven to 350 degrees. Put it in there for 25 to 30 minutes and then pull it out. It won't look like it's done all the way, and if you stick a toothpick in it, it'll still come out with some moist batter on there. But that's okay. That's the way brownies are supposed to be, and this is what the final product looks like, a nice moist brownie. If you want it a little drier, then cook it for longer. And then when we put it on the plate, this is what it looks like. I think this serves about 16 small servings. Thanks for watching, and have a wonderful day.